If we lose one game, we're playing qualifiers.
Nothing new for us in the last few years. So
Welcome back to Sri Lankan Cricket Podcast with Vida and Bora. We are recording this on a Tuesday, 21st of March, after a series loss to New Zealand. We came to New Zealand hoping for a 2-0 win and make the World Test Championship final. We ended up losing the series 2-0. A lot went wrong in this series. There are some bright sparks as well. So to talk about the series and a few other things happened after the series, once again, I'm here with my co-host Sohan. Bora, cricket season's finished. How are you going, and what do you think about the second test?
yeah, in terms of a cricket season winding down, thinking back of a season gone by and how to plan for the next year on a personal point of view, which I mean is a good way to venture into the New Zealand series because I think there was a bit of false hope after the first test match. Things would be pretty positive, but this is playing against a strong team playing at home in New Zealand, where not a lot of teams have gone out there and come out on with a series win. So it was a big task. We pushed the right buttons in terms of making the game tight, and then we were a bit enthusiastic going into the second test match. Just that reality came down really fast in terms of how strong the Kiwi boys were at their home condition. So and yeah, you're right. We went there with the hope of securing or trying to push for a finals berth in the World Test Championship, but came out with a 2-0 loss. So I guess let's pick apart some of the performances in this test series and some of the changes. I mean, which we can, there are two ways to go with, I think, most of the calls, which they made. I think looking back, I think we could have held off on some of the calls. So.
Yeah, a lot went wrong in the second test. So we'll start with the selections, Bora. We talked about possible scenarios of the 11 in our last episode. Nishan Madushka made his test debut. Dick Weller had to sit out, making way for Madushka to come in. He's an opening bat in trade, and he batted at number 7. In my opinion, I think that was the wrong call. We have a 2-test series against Ireland in Sri Lanka, so I think we should have waited till April for Madushka to make a debut back home in the home conditions. That's my personal opinion. What do you think? That you think it was the right call to bring him in?
Well, I think I did on the last episode. I did say they will make the change. That Nick Adler will stay out, but that's going by all the hype that is around and what's going on. But when you take a step back and look, like, because they discussed about who's the best keeper in Sri Lanka at the moment, they speak highly of Dick Weller, and credit to him, he has a test record to show that he's one of the best wicket keepers going around. So on hindsight, they could have stuck to that because you needed a good keeper behind the stumps. But I think that first test kind of the mistakes he did was highlighted there. But then, I mean, Nishan Madushka has got the form behind him, and being youth, new person, everyone wanted to see that happening. But then when you see him live wicket keeping in a test match, you do see some technical faults as well. That at first sight of, I mean, that's my view. Having watched a bit of cricket, that doesn't seem to come across as a natural keeper, whereas the Dick Wellers do have that natural wicket keeping abilities. It's same where some people in the past would speak about Sangakkara and P.J. Prasanna, where they are like the technical skills they had, and how Sangakkara improved himself. So Nishan, being a youth player, probably has that skill sets and time on his sleeve to improve In terms of where should he have batted, in New Zealand, definitely number 7, not so much the opener. I think he would have struggled a lot
Not
straight
after
away.
fielding for 554. You don't want to
Correct.
come out and open
Yeah.
the batting.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, yeah, they batted in there. Going into Sri Lanka, does it mean they stick with him, or do they again go through the ropes of changing players? Would be a question. But I feel like we could have done by playing Vishwa in that playing 11 instead of Prabhat Jayasuriya. Because he, like, the wicket was, I mean, if it wasn't gonna spin on day 4 or 5, it was just gonna be a flat track. So I think we should have done that change there into the second test match, just bring in that extra quick, just to as a change, because like even the likes of Asitas, they've had a lot of overs behind them to, they would feel a bit of fatigue. So my change would have been more into that aspect. I would have kept with the same batting order. I mean, Dikwela runs, he's batting at 7. You don't expect a massive. It's up to the top order to make runs. If the top order makes runs, or if the top order doesn't make runs, the scapegoat shouldn't be your number 7 wicket-keeper batsman. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, that's when normally he make runs. When the top order
right.
fails, he make runs.
Yeah,
I agree with you. It's just that I'm not a big fan of changing things too much,
yeah,
especially when we don't play much Test cricket, Bora.
yeah,
We stuck to a method in the last few months,
yeah,
which has been good for us. So this sends a wrong message to the players. It's not something you want to think about when you want to perform. Especially a senior player. I mean, Dikwela is a senior player in this team. If this can happen to a senior player, all the youngsters in the team thinking, they're playing for survival after that.
yeah,
And that's not what we want. We want them to play their natural game. You are there because you are the best in the country, and this chopping and changing, and especially Madushka is coming in as a batsman. He's not coming in because he's done really well in domestic cricket
wicket-keeper.
as a
Yeah,
wicketkeeper, right? He's scored tons of runs in domestic cricket, and he's coming in as a batsman. So if they want to play him, keep Osha the Fernand and let him off with the batting. This is why, like, that's double standards that I didn't like. It's I know that we didn't have a chance to make the finals. Then we would have given everyone a chance
yeah.
without play all the youngsters in the team. So
Just adding to that, you're right. Not playing Test cricket over 6 months means you're gonna find certain players, especially it's one like who hasn't played a lot of international T20 or one-day cricket, feeling the brunt of it. And wicket keepers, if you're not always, keeping up in a test match or one day, and you're not having that consistent run, you do tend to be rusty, or
yes,
form tends to play a part. Then the next set of players would be the bowlers, because you're not used to bowling that, tight lines, having volume built up. First class cricket, the guys don't get this amount of overs bowl under their belt. One day cricket doesn't help for you to form that, steady line. It's more variation driven. So that's the form of the batters probably can cope a little bit, adjust to it, just the concentration changes, probably. So when you look at that, were we surprised that Dikwela might struggle or might not feel up to it, especially in New Zealand in seaming conditions? Those are things you got to factor in, rather than making the move. So then would another test match given him the opportunity to, have that momentum and then show that difference? We don't know now because he didn't play. But now it's how Sri Lanka cricket plans to manage the test team, take a position on how they want to go from here, because Ireland, they've changed the one-day setup into a test tournament, or a test series. In a test championship, Sri Lanka only played 12 matches against the other countries which have pushed a lot of test matches. So few things they've got to plan how they want to go. And I think a good way to move into the next topic with is Dimuth, where he's made an announcement. He's thinking he'd like to step down from the captaincy. So that's, I mean, you got to listen to the person why he's making wants to step down. Probably he feels the involvement's not as much, having so many layoffs between series. So being a captain, is there a big influence on what he wants to do for the team, or could that be one of the main reasons why he wants to step down?
That's what I was wondering too, Bora. Remember, the start of the series, he backed Dickwell as the number one wicketkeeper in the team. So I'm wondering that decision to keep Dickwell out of the team has, I'm not saying that decision caused Dimuth's decision to step down, but maybe, you as a captain, you want the team you have the confidence in, right?
Yeah.
So you're the one taking the team to the middle. You can have all these theories, all these giving opportunities, all that, but end of the day, you're the captain. You're the one who's taking the team to the middle, and you're the ones making decisions. So if you don't have the confidence in your team, maybe he's thinking, it's time for me to just play as a batsman and just end my career as a, last 2-3 years of my career, I'll just play as a batsman. So because what the reason he's given was like it's a 2-year test cycle, and he wants to give opportunity to a new test captain to take us to the next World Test Championship final. But I don't know whether it's the right decision, because a lot of uncertainties in Sri Lanka cricket at the moment. We don't know who's going to be the next selectors, and there's lots of things happening in Sri Lanka. So adding this to all that, which is not good news for us.
And if you have a bit of an uncertain schedule in Test cricket, I wouldn't. If I'm in Dimuth's shoes, I probably don't want to be, the Test captain as well, because even coming into this Test series, 6 months, I don't think they would have been planning 6 months in advance how to tackle this series. But then the little you plan, you prepare, you come here, first test doesn't go to plan, and then suddenly all that you plan changes, and then you almost think, is it worth this effort going into the next one as a group, or you concentrate on your individual performances and help towards the team? So maybe it's that not having that, he wants to concentrate on his own game, which he's at a good spot where his game's at, where he's got full control of it. Probably thinks that's a better way to go with it, and support whoever the captain that's going to come in, because now Sri Lanka are heading into a situation where they've got 3 good players in Dimuth, Angelo and Chandimal, who are not on the right side of their age as well. So at a certain point, they've got to make decisions on how to manage that. So the next line of batters would be your Dhananjay De Silvas, Usanda Fernandos, Kusal Mendes. Those are the guys taking over. So they want to take more of a leadership role. And then gradually the senior players will eventually move out, which is a reality.
Yeah. I have a feeling DDS will be the best candidate if Dimuth actually steps down.
A bit of Game of Thrones with captaincy in Sri Lanka in the past, so it will be interesting how this transition happened. I think Dimuth came in and settled that captaincy swap of hats. Same with Dasun Shanaka, he managed to settle the board there in terms of captains, or or leading the ship there. Does it now start again when Dimuth lets go of his captaincy? Who are the people they are thinking about? I think if you take away, if even if you play Niroshan Dikwal, if he had played this test match, he would have become a captaincy contender. Like he's had a good school record as a captain. Then Dhananjaya De Silva, I mean, front runners would be Dhananjaya De Silva.
Kusal
Mendes
Mendy,
probably be there, but he just a bit of grey area around discipline. Same with Dikwal. Chandimal probably comes back into the picture as a past captain who potentially can take over as well. So those are those rotations, but how they manage that, how they tackle that, will also factor around who the selector is.
Yeah, they'll have to select a selector first, then select a captain.
Yeah,
it's a big mess, Bora. When you talked about changing the captaincy, first thing came to my head is we might see a few players switching clubs if the captain changes. So that's normal in Sri Lanka cricket. Anything else to talk about New Zealand series? I mean, Kane Williamson had a fantastic series, highest run scorer. I think he's scored more than 330 runs, double 100. Nichols got a double 100. Saudi and Henry most wickets with I think more than 10 wickets in both tests.
Yeah.
If we think about our team, who shined and who didn't do well, for me, fast bowlers did a good job. They didn't break down for a change. They bowl long spells. Not the best bowling in the second test. Everyone went for more than 100 runs, but I'm doubting the decision to bowl first on that pitch was a bad decision too, Bora.
It's a hard one seeing such green grass, so that much of a thick green wicket on, and not a lot of Sri Lankan captains would have gone and said, "We're gonna bat on this." So
especially when the captain is the opener.
Yeah, so not surprised on that decision. Looking back on the performance of the series, there's been a bit of spread out performances, but one guy I think was a silent performer, and what I saw of him, the attitude and how he went about his cricket, I was pretty happy was Kasun Rajitha. Even at the back end of when the game was almost done, he kept batting there with limited capabilities, made sure he blocks it out and somehow just stay in the moment and try to do his best. So
batted more than 100
he's
balls,
been good. Yeah, more than 100 balls. So he's been good. Sita Fernando's been good.
Yeah.
Angelo Matthews was good in the first test. Probably could have, couldn't do what he was needed in the second, and just spaced out performances within. So the guys had 4 innings to perform, and did the guys perform in 3 out of the 4 innings? Probably Dimuth might be the one ticking that box. Everyone else kind of had a score, one score out of 4, which in Test cricket you want to be pushing.
Except for Kusal, he had 250s.
So he had 250s. So again, a half and half. Like I reckon a good, like Kane Williamson, 4 out of 3, and 2 massive scores, so important scores. That's where I think we need to be better, or that's where Test cricket has moved on, where the batters who score runs score big runs now. So when you think of 4 innings performances in, would we have done better? Probably yes. Yeah, like Dhananjay had a score of a 90, and I think maybe a 40 or a 50.
Yeah.
Osanda probably falls down the pecking order as an opener now with what he's put out there.
Yeah.
Chandimal did 250s, I think, out of 4 innings. So
yeah, we lacked that big inning, Bora. That's why we couldn't. We were in good positions, but no one went on and make a big 100.
Yeah.
We needed that 130, 150 from one batsman. for us to, be in a commanding position in both test matches. That didn't happen. Talk about losses. I think Prabhat Jayasuriya was a minus for me, Bora. I personally believe Prabhat is not our overseas spinner. I think Lasith Dimuth would have done a better job. I
You're
don't know
right, and I think
he is in.
we spoke about this in when Sri Lanka, the last test series about in Australia,
Yeah,
or when Australia were there. Lasith should be playing overseas test
yeah,
matches, definitely. So
yeah. I mean, it's a learning curve for him as well, Prabhat. He had a fantastic series against Australia. He's,
yeah,
but that was way back, so you can't carry that form after 6 months. So you can't blame the guy. But Ambula's lengths he bowl and those variations he has on those not so helpful wickets would have been a better option for us than going with Prabhat Jayasuriya. So that's the minus. You rightly mentioned, like if we went with Vishwa Fernando, would have been a better option on that pitch.
left arm seam up, both bowling.
Yeah, you would have loved ball in there on the fourth day, Bora. Did you see the video?
Yeah,
They had to take the cameraman off from one end, so they broadcast the test from one end because the wind was.
wind was too strong.
This one ball, it drifted away. All spinner's ball drifted away and pitched outside the pitch.
Yeah, so that.
Yeah, you would have loved it, Iska.
Yeah, bit of a grief.
Yeah.
Focus on to the
Yes,
ODI series that's going to kick off
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
They're playing cricket after a while as well, I think. But I guess Tilna Kandambi is a new addition into the coaching group there. So I think that's the right move to get him involved. At least if it's not in the short term, he is a coach that could transition through into the national setup. So having him involved there is a good thing. He does command a lot of the respect from the playing group as well.
Yeah.
So he will be could be a shadow coach, but he will have some input onto the playing group there. Vanidu Hasaranga again, eyes will be on him how he performs in New Zealand. He's been
Newly, newly married.
uh, newly married and internet. He's one of the star T20 players going around in international cricket, so they'll like to see his skill sets in New Zealand, because we know everyone knows his performance in the subcontinent and how he goes about it. So New Zealand generally people like to see, okay, you're known as a top performer. How do you go in different conditions? And they do rate them similar to how Virat Kohli is rated highly when he tours Australia, scores a lot of runs as a batsman. So Vanidu, another small test for him in his individual career.
Mm.
Um, Dasun coming in here
Patum.
as well.
Patum.
Hathum Nisanka is a interesting one because he didn't make the test series. So I don't know what the scenario there is, whether he's nursing an injury, but
Save that.
easy pick
Saving
would
him for
be
the one day.
again. Maybe they rested him, but easy answer for me into an Ireland series or Sundar Fernando will sit out. Pathum Nisanka will replace him in that playing 11. But again, yeah, tough. It's going to be a tough one-day series. We need to perform really well to be, to get ahead of qualifying or get into the World Cup.
We had a new win
Um,
3-0.
yeah, it's
We messed things up by losing to Afghanistan and what's the other
yeah,
team? Zimbabwe? If we lose one game, we're playing qualifiers.
nothing new for us in the last few years. So we played qualifying here in Australia, so um, we're used to it now. So
Yeah. Two players we forgot. Matisha Teakshan and Matisha Patirana. They are both in the one-day squad.
yeah,
So lots of options for Dasun to pick a team.
I think we've got a strong bowling attack.
Yeah,
It'll depend whether they do play Charmika in this setup now, because he's another factor who's
yeah,
found himself out of the team. So does he find himself into the one-day team, or is there a change there? Something to keep an eye out. I reckon they'll give him a go first
mm,
up of the series. But again, I think the main thing from a fast bowling all-rounder, when you travel out to countries like New Zealand, Australia, England, you got to start performing. You can't do that holding role and take a back seat. You actually have to bowl your full quota of overs and make an impact.
yeah.
So it's another test for Charmika to come through. So
Um,
that kicks off this week. That will be keen. I think it'll be some good matches to watch. So um, New Zealand generally plays on smaller grounds on one
mm.
day for one day games. So looking for a bit more entertainment there.
Yeah, that'll be good. Before we wrap up, news coming from USA. USA, they are launching their new league, Major League Cricket. They call it the USA's moonshot to get cricket going in USA. Big investors, teams all around the country, and there's big names have signed up for this league. I think it's going to happen in July, August. Already seen Corey Anderson, Finchy,
You got the Sri Lankan boys are involved
Bowlers.
there who've migrated to the US. There are three Sri Lankan players
Yeah.
plus one who is involved as an overseas
Mm.
player. Um, Cricket Victoria has a partnership with one of the franchises, so that shows the keen interest a state team has put through.
Mumbai
Um,
Indians, Chennai.
yeah, exactly where I wanted to go with franchise cricket. A lot of the country or franchise tournaments expect the IPL teams to venture their investments into it. So USC is another market. They've done looks like it's they're heading the right way. They want to push through to get in an Olympic spot or get involved in the competition there. The stadiums looks like they are changing, no longer baseball focused stadiums. Looks like there is an effort to make a change into the stadium setup. There are a few snips I've seen of the stadium which looks more of a fan interacting module,
Yeah.
similar to how the MLS probably goes around. So far from the player draft, it seems there is a lot of investment behind with some of the franchises coming in. Next thing would be TV rights, which will determine as well who's involved. One small factor I don't know whether they'll struggle or it'll actually work in their favor is the time zone the matches will be played to the viewing time in India. So because there's almost a 24-hour turnaround, we
Yeah.
might be having watching games during the daytime.
Yeah.
So that could be a factor. When they crunch the numbers, they'll know it might actually work because at that time, wonder what will be on TV for people to
Yeah.
watch.
Well, it's the biggest market in the world, Bora. If it gets picked up, the money will flow in, you know.
Yeah.
There's lots of investors when they sniff a little bit of opportunity, they'll go all in because there's no problem raising money there. The franchise sport is big in USA. That's where you make the money. So it'll be tough for Australia and England to compete if things pick up in USA. That's my worry because this happens during England's English summer. So if they lose players going into America, then the 100 will lose their stars, and so it's England and Australia. They're already struggling to cope up with IPL. So adding
Yeah.
this to that, I think the traditional cricket will really struggle in the years to come.
Yeah, you're right. I think being based in Australia, we know the summer of cricket, how important it is and how they go about it. Boxing Day, Test match, MCG, generally in the past, Australia would loves to play 5 test matches through the summer. It could be a 3 test match series and a 2 test match series. That's gonna reduce. There's already talks of the Adelaide test match being moved into the new year. These are factors that would hit those schedules. So they might trim down to a 3 test series in countries like Australia. England's got their summer of cricket, which is about to kick off now, but they're also struggling on the back of a strong winter. So countries will have to decide what their traditional game is, and they'll try to preserve that while letting go of a few other test matches or other tournaments that have been has played, but they no longer can accommodate it because of franchise cricket taking over. That we'll start to see happening.
It's going to be interesting, but I don't have high hopes of more test cricket being played, Bora. So, which is sad, but it is what it is. We are evolving. Cricket is evolving as a game. So,
yeah,
I think that's all the time we have for this week. Let's talk about New Zealand versus Sri Lanka one-day games in a couple more days. If you have a question or comments, please send it to srilankancricketpodcast@gmail.com or send us a message.
Thanks a lot for listening, everyone. Catch you up next time.
All right. Thank you. See you soon.
Yes.
Bye.